My desk was still sticky from a spilled iced coffee when a calendar invite popped up with my name in the subject line, and the note beneath it said I was being discussed, so I stayed quiet while something inside me cracked. It was sent from my own agency email, but I had never created it, and I didn't understand why someone would bait a meeting like that unless they wanted me to walk in defenseless. My name is Lorelai, I'm 32, and I work as a marketing strategist at a mid-sized agency in a major US city. I stared at my monitor like it might blink first. The invite had a conference room listed, the kind with the glass walls that make you feel like an exhibit. It was scheduled for the end of the day, right when everyone gets tired and mean. No agenda, no context, just my name floating there like a target. I did the thing I always do when I'm scared at work. I went calm. I opened my notes app. I wrote down the time the invite came in. I took a screenshot, then another. I forwarded the invite to my personal email with the subject line, "For the record." People think revenge is loud. It isn't. Sometimes revenge is a woman with a clean notebook and a steady hand. The invite came from our new senior account lead, Sterling. He'd joined 8 months earlier with a perfect smile and a resume that read like a miracle. He was charming in meetings, generous with praise, quick to volunteer for tough projects. He also had a habit of taking credit the way some people take sugar packets from a cafe, little by little, until the bowl is empty and nobody knows where it went. At first, I told myself I was being sensitive. I'd been at this agency long enough to know the politics. I knew how easily a good idea can get absorbed by a louder voice, so I started keeping my own quiet documentation, not because I wanted a fight, because I wanted safety. The project that changed everything was a product launch for a client who'd been burned by 2 agencies before us. They were anxious, demanding, and they watched every deadline like it was a heart monitor. Our creative director wanted bold, the client wanted safe. Sterling wanted to look like the hero who could magically make both happen. We were 2 weeks from the pitch when Sterling started calling me the detail person in front of everyone. It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. It was a box, a corner, the kind you get pushed into right before someone needs a scapegoat. One Monday morning, he walked into my office area with a printed deck in his hand, pages slightly crooked like he'd rushed the stapler. "I need you to do a final check," he said, friendly. "Just your eyes. You're the one I trust for accuracy." It felt nice to hear that. That was the problem. Sterling knew how to feed the part of you that's hungry for reassurance. I flipped through the deck. Everything looked normal. Brand colors, copy, metrics, timeline. I flagged a couple minor phrasing issues and sent him a quick message with the notes. He replied with a thumbs up. Then he asked me to export a fresh version, just in case. I did it. Of course I did. I named the file like I always do, with the date spelled out. I uploaded it to our shared drive. I posted the link in our project channel. Then I went back to work. 2 days later, the client pitch happened without me. Sterling told me I didn't need to attend, that he'd handle it. And honestly, I was relieved. The room with the glass walls made my stomach turn. I thought he was being kind. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from a junior designer. "Are you okay?" I stared at it, confused, and typed back, "Why?" No reply. Just typing bubbles, then nothing. A few minutes later, my manager called me into her office. Her face was careful, like someone trying not to step on a landmine. "Lorelai," she said, "the client is upset." I sat down slowly. I could feel my throat tightening before I even knew why. "They say your data was wrong," she continued. "They're saying we presented inaccurate numbers about their conversion rate. They want to know why we built a strategy based on incorrect inputs." My ears rang. "My data?" I repeated too quietly. She slid her laptop toward me. On the screen was a screenshot from the client, a slide from our pitch deck. My stomach dropped. The numbers were wrong, not a little wrong, embarrassingly wrong, the kind of wrong that makes you look incompetent, careless, untrustworthy, but I hadn't created that slide. And I knew it because I'd built the original version weeks earlier, and I had the export in my own folder with my comments, my tracked changes, my notes to the analyst. I knew exactly what those numbers were supposed to be. I also knew exactly what they looked like when they were correct. I looked up at my manager. "Can I see the version that was presented?" I asked. She hesitated. Sterling handled the deck. My heart did something cold and sharp. I stood up and said, "Okay." That was it. No argument, no tears, no dramatic speech. I walked back to my desk like nothing had happened. I smiled at the receptionist. I answered 2 emails. Then I opened the shared drive and checked the file history. The deck Sterling had presented had been uploaded from his account the night before the pitch. A final version. And right there in the version history were edits made after my last export. Edits that changed the numbers. Edits that removed a footnote I had included about data limitations. Edits that made it look like I'd rushed and guessed. I felt humiliation first, hot and thick, the kind that makes you want to disappear. Then I felt anger, not loud anger, the kind that steadies you. I clicked through the edit log. I took screenshots of every change. I saved them to a folder on my desktop labeled simply Notes. I also emailed the screenshots to myself from my phone because I'd learned the hard way that computers can mysteriously get wiped when someone's trying to protect a narrative. That night, Sterling messaged me, "Hey, sorry you got pulled into that. Clients can be dramatic. We'll smooth it over." I stared at the message until my eyes burned. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to type something sharp, something satisfying. Instead, I typed, "No worries. Let me know what you need." He replied almost immediately, "Actually, yeah, I might need you to jump on a quick call tomorrow. Just back me up on the numbers piece. You know how leadership is." I felt my face go blank. He wasn't asking me to fix it. He was asking me to carry it. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch. Then I wrote, "Sure." That one word made him confident. I could almost feel him relaxing on the other end, thinking he'd won. The next morning, I walked into the office early with my coffee and my calm. I requested access to the analytics dashboard directly from our internal data team, citing client concern. That request created a ticket, a timestamp, a trail. Then I opened the pitch deck and inserted something tiny into the speaker notes, invisible during presentation, a short line that pulled a live link from the dashboard. dashboard. So if anyone clicked it, it would log the user. Sterling loved shortcuts. He also loved copying and pasting anything that made him look efficient. At noon, the call with leadership was scheduled. Sterling invited me last minute and wrote, "Just listen. I'll handle most of it." The meeting started. Sterling spoke with that easy confidence that makes people assume competence. He explained the client's concern like it was a weather issue. Unfortunate, but uncontrollable. Then he said, "Lorelei was responsible for the data synthesis, and she can confirm the numbers came straight from the client's reporting." I felt every eye in the room tilt toward me. I could have exploded. I could have corrected him loudly. I could have thrown my screenshots onto the table like a grenade. But loud revenge gives people something to argue with, so I stayed calm. I nodded once and said, "I can confirm where the original data came from." Sterling smiled, satisfied, and continued. He shared his screen and opened the deck. He scrolled to the slide with the wrong numbers. Then he clicked the speaker notes, looking for something, probably trying to sound prepared. And he clicked the live link. On my laptop, the dashboard log updated in real time. User Sterling. Time exactly now. I didn't react. I just watched. He cleared his throat and said, "See? It aligns." But it didn't. The dashboard showed the correct numbers, different from the slide on his screen. There was a pause. A small, deadly pause. My manager leaned forward. "Sterling," she said carefully, "why are the numbers on your slide different from the dashboard?" Sterling blinked. "They shouldn't be," he said too quickly. "It must be an update." I kept my face neutral. Inside, my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might shake my chair. He tried to talk his way through it, but the room had changed. People were alert now. Suspicious. The spell was breaking. And this is the cliffhanger moment, so quick real-life pause. Some nights I'm editing and I want to quit, but then I see your comments and I keep going. Tap like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. All right, now let me take you back. After the meeting ended, Sterling cornered me near the copier. His voice was low, sweetly threatening. "Why didn't you just back me up?" he asked. I looked at him with the calm of someone who already knows the ending. "I did," I said. "I confirmed the original source." His eyes narrowed. "You know what I meant." I tilted my head slightly. "Do I?" He stared at me, calculating. Then he softened his expression, like he was switching masks. "Look," he said, "we're on the same team. Let's not make this a thing. If leadership asks, we keep it clean." I smiled a little, like I was tired, like I wanted peace. "Of course," I said. Then I walked away. That afternoon, I didn't go to HR. I didn't send a dramatic email. I didn't warn anyone loudly. I did something quieter. I forwarded the version history screenshots, the data ticket, and the live link log to our compliance officer, the one person in the building who doesn't care about charisma. I wrote a short note. "Hi, I'm concerned about document integrity and client reporting. Attaching relevant logs for review. No accusations. No emotional language, just facts." 2 days later, Sterling stopped showing up to meetings. His calendar went blank. People whispered about a review. The client, suddenly, was offered a formal apology and a discount. Leadership held a short all-staff meeting about process improvements and accountability. Sterling didn't look at me the one time we passed in the hallway. His jaw was tight, his eyes glossy with rage he couldn't spend. A week after that, he sent me one last message. "She really did that to me?" I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered again, not to type anger, but to type the truth. Instead, I wrote, "I didn't do anything to you. I just kept records." Then I muted the conversation. The best part came quietly, the way real consequences often do. Our compliance officer later told my manager that Sterling had been altering decks across multiple accounts, not just mine. My folder of proof didn't start the fire. It just showed exactly where the smoke was coming from. Sterling was gone by the end of the month, and on the morning after his exit email went out, I opened my desk drawer, saw the dried coffee stain on my notebook, and finally let myself breathe because I realized my silence hadn't been weakness at all. I capped my pen, slid the notebook back into the drawer, and told myself I was done living in survival mode. That lasted about 1 day. The first sign came in the form of friendliness, the kind that feels like a trap with a smile painted on it. My manager stopped by my desk with 2 mugs of tea, like we were in a movie where everything gets resolved by warmth. She set one down, sat on the edge of the visitor chair, and spoke carefully. "Leadership wants to make you the point person on deck approvals," she said. "A new control step for client trust." I kept my expression soft. Inside, my stomach tightened. "That's a lot of responsibility," I said, because it was the only safe sentence. She nodded. "I know, but you're thorough. And after everything, they want someone who won't let anything slip." I understood what she wasn't saying. They wanted the comfort of my caution. They also wanted a person they could quietly blame if something ever went wrong again. I didn't argue. I didn't refuse. I smiled like I was grateful. "Okay," I said, "I can do that." The next week became a blur of tiny requests with big consequences. People forwarded me decks at the last second, acting casual, like their chaos was normal and my job was to clean it up. I started coming in earlier. I started leaving later. I started feeling that familiar pressure in my chest, the one that tells you your body has noticed danger before your mind has. And then the second sign came, not friendly, sharp. An email from HR arrived at 7 in the morning. Subject line, confidential concern. My fingers went cold before I even opened it. The message was short and sterile. Someone had filed a complaint about unprofessional behavior and creating a hostile work environment. No details, no name. HR wanted to schedule a meeting to understand the situation. I read it twice, then a third time, like the words might change. Hostile, me. I had never raised my voice in that office. I had never slammed a door. I had never sent a cruel email. My whole survival strategy had been to stay calm, be useful, and keep receipts. But I also knew something else. When someone loses power, they don't always go quietly. Sometimes they try to poison the well on the way out. I didn't panic, not on the outside. I forwarded the HR email to my personal account. I took a screenshot. I wrote down the time it arrived. Then I opened my calendar and accepted the meeting invite with a simple reply. Sounds good. Happy to clarify. The HR meeting was set for the following afternoon in one of the smaller rooms with frosted frosted glass, the kind of room that feels like a dentist office for your career. When I arrived, HR smiled too brightly, like she was trying to convince me this was normal. "Thanks for coming, Lorelai," she said. "This is just a conversation." I sat down, crossed my ankles, and folded my hands in my lap. I forced myself to breathe slowly because my heart wanted to sprint. "Of course," I said. She glanced down at her notes. "A concern was raised that you've been undermining colleagues and creating anxiety around deliverables, that you've been intimidating." I almost laughed. It rose up in my throat like a reflex, disbelief mixed with something bitter. I swallowed it. "I want to be really clear," I said softly. "I haven't intimidated anyone. If anything, I've been absorbing stress that isn't mine." HR's smile flickered. "Can you give an example of what you mean?" Yes, I thought. I can give you 100 examples, but I shouldn't give them all at once. Flooding a room with truth makes people defensive. So I said, "I can show you the workflow I was assigned, the timestamps, and the approvals. I can also show you the messages where people send me decks minutes before client calls." HR hesitated. "We don't need to get too detailed." That was the moment I understood something important. She didn't want clarity. She wanted closure. She wanted the complaint to feel handled without dragging the agency into anything uncomfortable. I stayed calm anyway. "I'd like it to be detailed," I said, "because my reputation matters." Her eyes narrowed just slightly, then softened again. "Okay, we can review documentation." After the meeting, I walked out and went straight to my desk. I opened my folder, notes. I added a new subfolder. HR. I started saving everything. But the third sign came that same night, and it didn't come through email. It came through silence. I logged into the shared drive from home to review a deck for a morning call. The file opened, but half the linked assets were missing. Images that had been there earlier were gone. A video embed was broken. A critical slide with the budget summary showed a blank chart. At first, I thought the drive was glitching. Then I checked the activity log. Files deleted. Files moved. Permission changes. My pulse thudded in my ears. The user who made the changes wasn't Sterling. His account had already been deactivated. It was someone else. Someone still inside. I sat at my kitchen table in the dim light of my stove clock, my tea cooling beside me, and I felt that old humiliation trying to crawl back into my skin. The feeling of being cornered, blamed, and made to look sloppy. But this time I had a different kind of fear. Not the fear of being embarrassed. The fear of being targeted. I didn't call anyone. I didn't send a frantic message into the group chat. I didn't accuse. I did something quieter. I restored the missing files using version history. Then I downloaded a local copy of the full deck to a secure folder. Then I requested a permissions audit from our internal IT team, framing it as a routine check for the new approval process. Routine is a beautiful disguise. It makes people stop looking for motives. The next morning, IT replied with a ticket number and a promise to review access logs. Good, a trail. That afternoon, a coworker I used to eat lunch with stopped by my desk. Her face looked conflicted, like she was carrying gossip she didn't want to be holding. "I'm not supposed to tell you this," she whispered, "but someone is saying you got Sterling fired." I kept my eyes on my screen. "I didn't fire anyone," I said. She shifted her weight. "They're saying you set him up." I let out a slow breath like I was bored, like it didn't land. Inside, something cold settled in my chest. "I kept records," I said. "That's all." She nodded, but her expression said she had already heard a story that was easier to swallow than mine. That's the thing about workplaces. People love a villain. It makes them feel safe. If someone is the villain, then everyone else is just normal. Over the next few days, I felt the shift in the air. Conversation stopped when I walked by. People were polite, but not warm. It wasn't open hostility. It was worse. It was social distance, like my calm had become contagious and they didn't want to catch it. Then a new email landed in my inbox. Not from HR, not from IT. From a recruiter, a well-known agency, a senior role, a salary range that made my stomach flip. The message was upbeat. "We'd love to move you forward. We just need a few references." I stared at the screen for a long time. My first thought wasn't excitement. It was suspicion, because I hadn't applied there. I hadn't sent my resume anywhere. I clicked into the email header details and confirmed it was legitimate. I checked the domain. I checked the recruiter name on professional networks. Everything looked real. My hands started to shake just slightly. Someone had submitted my name. Someone had sent my profile out into the world without my permission. I replied politely, asking how they found me. The recruiter answered quickly. "A former colleague recommended you. Said you were a rock under pressure." Former colleague. My mind ran through names like a wheel spinning too fast. But then another message arrived. This one from a different recruiter, different agency, same tone. "We heard amazing things. We'd love to chat. References required." And then another. By the third message, my fear sharpened into clarity. This wasn't an accident. This was a push. Someone was trying to get me to leave. They weren't firing me. They were steering me toward the exit, quietly, so the office could breathe again without the woman who kept receipts. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, trying to calm my breathing. I thought of Sterling's last message. She really did that to me? No, I thought. I didn't do anything to you, but someone was doing something to me now. I opened my sent folder and searched for any outbound emails with my resume attached. Nothing. Checked my LinkedIn activity. No applications. No messages initiated by me. Then I checked something else. My calendar. A meeting invite I hadn't noticed earlier had been added. A career chat scheduled during my lunch hour. Created by someone with admin access to my schedule. No description. No organizer name I recognized. My mouth went dry. I didn't delete it. I didn't decline it. I didn't alert the office. I forwarded it to my personal email. Screenshot, timestamp, notes folder. Then I did the quietest revenge move I knew. I accepted the invite, and I booked a second meeting right after it with IT, attaching the ticket number and a calm request. "I'd like a full access log review for my calendar permissions and file permissions. This feels like unauthorized activity. No emotion, no accusation, just process. The day of the mysterious career chat, I walked into the glass room with my notebook and my calm face. Nobody else was there yet. The air conditioning hummed like a warning. I sat down. I placed my phone face down on the table, recording audio the way my lawyer friend once taught me to do for my own notes. I didn't feel dramatic. I felt practical. Then the door opened, and the person who walked in wasn't a recruiter at all. It was my manager's manager, smiling like this was a favor. She closed the door behind her gently, like we were about to share a secret instead of a trap. "Lorelei," she said, taking the seat across from me. I wanted to check in. Off the record, my mouth tasted like metal. My palms were damp, but my face stayed calm. "Sure," I said. "What's going on?" She folded her hands neatly on the table. Her nails were perfect. Her smile was soft, the kind of softness that makes you doubt your own instincts. "I've been hearing that you're unhappy here," she said, "that you're looking elsewhere. Recruiters, interviews, that kind of thing." My stomach tightened because she didn't even pretend it was a question. "I haven't applied anywhere," I said, "so I'm not sure where that's coming from." Her eyes flickered just once. "Well," she replied like she was disappointed in me for lying. "Sometimes people don't realize the signals they give off." Signals, like I was leaking guilt through my pores. I held her gaze and said, "If my name was submitted to agencies, it wasn't by me." She leaned back slightly. "Lorelei, you've been through a lot. Sterling, the client issue, the fallout. I understand why you might want a fresh start, and I can help make that transition smooth." There it was, the push, wrapped in concern. A hand on my back guiding me toward the exit. I forced myself to keep my voice even. "Are you asking me to resign?" Her smile stayed in place, but her eyes cooled. "I'm asking you to consider what's best for your career. Sometimes staying in an environment where people have strong feelings can be limiting." I felt shame try to rise, that old reflex, the fear of being the difficult woman in the room. Then I felt anger, quiet and clean, because she wasn't talking about my work. She was talking about my presence. I nodded slowly. "I hear you." Her shoulders relaxed, like she thought that meant surrender. And she added, "There's another issue. HR received concerns about your tone with colleagues. Your intensity, some people feel watched. Because I kept receipts. Because I didn't let things slide." I looked down at my notebook, then back up. "Do you have examples?" She waved her hand like details were annoying. "It's more about culture, perception. You know how it is." I did know. It was how people erase you without using the word erase. I leaned forward slightly. "I want to understand," I said calmly, "because perception changes when facts come in." That made her pause. Her smile tightened. "Facts," she repeated, like she didn't like how the word sounded. I reached into my bag and pulled out my notebook. Not as a weapon, but as a quiet anchor. "I have documentation," I said, "and I have an IT ticket open about unauthorized changes to my permissions and files." The room shifted. The air felt sharper. Her voice dropped, still controlled. "Lorelei, you're making this bigger than it needs to be." I kept my face neutral. "I didn't make it bigger. Someone else did. I'm just tracking it." Her eyes narrowed. "This is exactly what people mean. This paranoia. This constant need to keep records." I felt my heart pound, but my voice stayed soft. "It's not paranoia if it's happening." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled again, too smooth. "Let me be direct," she said. "You're talented, but you're not easy. Agencies like ours need people who can move on. Move on. From being blamed, from being set up, from being targeted. Move on, meaning forget." I nodded once, like I accepted the criticism. "Okay." She leaned forward, thinking she'd won. "So, I can offer you a severance package. Quiet, respectful, you sign, you leave, everyone saves face." I felt my throat tighten, not from fear, from the insult of it. The way she assumed my dignity had a price tag. I took a slow breath. "I'm not resigning today," I said. Her smile vanished. "Lorelei," she warned, "don't make this hostile." I almost laughed again. The irony was sharp enough to cut. Instead, I said, "I'm going to ask one small question. Just one. Who added that career chat to my calendar?" Her eyes flicked to my phone on the table, face down. Her gaze lingered a fraction too long, and in that tiny slip I felt it. The confirmation. I didn't accuse. I didn't say her name like a threat. I just looked at her and waited. She stood abruptly, chair scraping. "This conversation is over," she snapped, the softness cracking. I stayed seated. "Okay," I said. She walked out. The door shut. I sat there alone in the humming cold, my hands shaking under the table where nobody could see. Then I stopped the recording. I didn't listen to it yet. I didn't need to. I knew what it held. Her offer, her pressure, her admission without words. Back at my desk, I acted normal. I answered emails. I sent a deck approval with polite notes. I smiled at the receptionist. I didn't show the panic under my ribs, but I worked quietly the way I always did. 8 replied that afternoon. They'd completed the audit. My calendar had been accessed by someone with administrative privileges tied to senior leadership support. My file permissions had been changed from the same access group. There were logs, timestamps, a trail that didn't point at a ghost. I didn't forward it to the whole company. I didn't threaten anyone. I sent it to compliance attached to my existing thread along with one more thing. A transcript of the meeting, typed carefully from the audio, with key quotes highlighted in plain language. No insults, no emotions, just truth. The next day, compliance asked me to come in early. This time, it wasn't the frosted glass room. It was a larger conference room with 2 people I'd never met, both of them serious, both of them already holding folders. One of them looked at me kindly. "Lorelei," she said, "we want you to know you did the right thing by documenting." My eyes burned. I blinked hard and nodded. They asked me to walk them through the timeline. I did calmly. Invite, wrong numbers, version history, the live link log, the file deletions, the HR complaint, the calendar manipulation, the severance offer. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then the second compliance officer said, "Sterling wasn't the architect architect. He was the tool. I felt my stomach drop, even though I'd suspected it. Hearing it out loud was different. What does that mean? I asked, my voice steady but thin. He slid a paper across the table. Sterling was given access he shouldn't have had. Someone above him. Someone who needed a fall guy when the client relationship started to crack. I stared at the paper. It was an internal access request approval, signed by my manager's manager. The same name that had sat across from me yesterday and offered me severance like a favor. My hands went numb. The compliance officer spoke gently. We're opening a formal investigation. You are not in trouble, and we want to discuss protections for you. Immediately. I swallowed. Shame tried to rise again, but it got blocked by something stronger. Relief, vindication, the feeling of finally being seen. By the end of that week, leadership held another staff meeting. This one was shorter, tighter, no warm words. They announced organizational changes. My manager's manager was leaving to pursue other opportunities. They didn't say why. They didn't say my name, but everyone understood something had happened. The office air felt different, lighter. People looked at me with a new kind of caution, not because I was dangerous, but because they realized I wasn't an easy target. Then the recruiter messages made sense. My name hadn't been submitted as praise. It had been used as pressure, a way to nudge me out without a fight, a way to make the agency cleaner by removing the woman who kept the paper trail. But the quiet revenge is that the trail didn't remove me. It removed the people who tried to erase me. A few days later, compliance called me back in. They offered me a formal role change with clearer authority and better pay, framed as recognition for process leadership. They also offered something else, quietly, a written statement for my file, confirming I had acted appropriately, and that prior complaints were deemed retaliatory. A shield, in ink. I walked out of that room and went back to my desk. I opened the drawer where my notebook lived. The coffee stain was still there, dark and stubborn. I traced it with my fingertip and felt my throat tighten again, but this time from gratitude to the version of me who stayed calm when it would have been easier to fall apart. That evening, as I packed up, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was one sentence. You think you won? I stared at it for a long moment. My heart beat hard, but my hands stayed steady. I didn't respond. I opened my notes app and added the message to my record. Then I blocked the number. On my way out, I passed the glass conference room where it all started, the one that made me feel like an exhibit. The lights inside were off. The chairs were empty. My reflection stared back at me in the dark glass. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look small. I looked dangerous in the quietest way, because I finally understood the truth. They didn't fear my voice. They feared my calm, because calm people don't forget, and calm people don't miss a signature.